be talking about my experience of week 3 and 4 of The Artist's Way. If you watch my other videos, you'll see that I've already done the first 2 weeks and I showed you one of my artist dates and told you how I was finding the process. So this week's continuation of that, but with 2 new chapters, a different artist date, and an artist date that didn't involve being out of the house because I'm supposed to be resting my knee at the moment. As you can see, I am now on crutches and I have a very sexy knee brace, so that's limiting my mobility a bit. So I just had to have my artist date for week 4 at home, and I did some adult colouring. Hopefully week 5 I can get out and do an artist date outside of where I live, and it can be a bit more interesting. I am quite enjoying the colouring though. It's fun, it's nice, it's quite meditative, especially if you have some music on in the background. So yes, it was a nice artist date. I'll tell you about my week 3 artist date in a moment as we go through the week. Week 3 is called Recovering a Sense of Power. She talks a little bit at the beginning of the chapter about synchronicity, in that we need to know what we want and put it out there without worrying about how we're going to do it, how we're going to get it, how we're going to feel, all of those sort of things. The knowing comes before the how. So she wants you to look out for little signs, you know, that come along in your everyday life that support what you want. And for me, having written some things in my morning pages in week 3, I then read something in a book which seemed to reflect exactly what I was saying in my morning pages. So that was my first example of synchronicity. I haven't really had any more experiences like that. So we've got synchronicity that we have to think about and watch for signs in everyday life that support our wishes and our desires. And then the main topic for this chapter is shame and how we can support ourselves when we feel shame, how it can block our creativity, and then how shame can show up because people criticise you, or they criticise your work or something you're doing. You feel small, you feel diminished, and you feel shame that you aren't good enough. Now I know I know a lot of that feeling, and she does actually talk about childhood shaming, and I had a fair bit of that in my childhood. And yeah, with reflection this week, it was very damaging, and it affects how you behave in the world and the parts of you you're willing to show and the parts that you're not so willing to show. So she says here, I'll just read you out a little bit to give you an idea of what she's talking about. For the artist endured childhood shaming over any form of neediness, any type of exploration, any expectation, shame may kick in even without the aid of a shame-provoking review. So if you even feel mildly awkward or criticised, that shame will come flooding back from childhood, and it'll feel visceral and take you right back to those feelings that you felt when you felt the shame in the first place. If a child has ever been made to feel foolish for believing himself or herself talented, the act of actually finishing a piece of art will be fraught with internal shaming. She talks about a sudden surge of disinterest. So say you're learning to play a musical instrument and you've almost got a piece of music off pat. You know all the notes, you know the tempo and everything. And just as you are about to be satisfied yourself with your progress and how you can play this piece of music, you'll suddenly stop playing it because you're worried about other people hearing it and judging you. So it's easier to say, oh, it doesn't matter, you know, I won't play it, because that's a form of self-protection, isn't it, really? The surge of sudden disinterest, it doesn't matter, is a routine coping device employed to deny pain and ward off vulnerability. So if you don't put yourself out there, you don't put yourself in a position to be criticised and to be vulnerable. So yeah, I know all about that, and I think that has a fair amount to do with my overspending. It's definitely a distraction, it's definitely a denial of who I really am as opposed to who I portray. That's not saying I'm lying about who I am, that's not the case at all, but you know, I'm probably quite guarded because I had shaming as a child and as an adult. I'm careful who I choose to let my guard down in front of. That's a bit heavy, isn't it? Okay, let's move on before I start crying. So I said we have to learn to create our safe environment. We have to learn to discern between criticism that is actually useful and might make you pause and think about what you're doing, and the criticism is constructive. It's given with love and guidance and the wish to help you move forwards. So sometimes thinking about, you know, what parts of what they've just said, you know, are true. You know, am I avoiding X, Y, Z? And you can learn a lot from that type of criticism if you don't take it the wrong way. If you see it as, yeah, that's constructive, that can help me and move me forwards. However, a lot of the criticism we get, especially in terms of showing our true selves and our creativity, it's like an attack on our personal self rather than the sort of creation that you've brought about. So a painting or piece of music or a beautifully designed flower bed or anything like that. That criticism feels like it's aimed at us, and that brings up the shame, rather than it's aimed at one specific creative project that you are now showing to the world. So yes, we have to learn to discern what type of criticism. And when the criticism is negative and it's attacking, the need to protect your inner child, your inner artist, is absolutely key to healing and moving forwards. You can't run with the reaction that, oh my God, I'm terrible, I'm an awful person, I'll never amount to anything. You have to break it down and reflect on what's been said and look for the truth or the lies in it. Probably if it's negative criticism, it will probably be lies, and it's based on what the person who's given the criticism feels rather than what they're actually seeing. Useless criticism leaves us feeling like we've been bludgeoned. As a rule, it is withering and shaming in tone, ambiguous in content, personal, inaccurate, or blanket in its condemnations. There is nothing to be gleaned from impossible criticism. So you have to nurture yourself when you feel hurt and the shames bubble into the surface from this horrible thing that somebody said. You have to be kind to yourself. You have to acknowledge that you're hurt. In your morning pages, write down pissed off you are about what this person said and how hurt you are and why you think they're wrong, how you're going to move forward. So you can express it through morning pages. You can say exactly what you want about the person who criticised you, and nobody will read it, so you can really have a good vent and get it out of your system. And she said creativity is the cure for criticism. So when you're feeling criticised and you feel it's unwarranted, that is the time to do something creative. It gets you out of that mindset, it gets you into a more meditative space. It moves you on with your own creative recovery. So some of the tasks for week 3 were, well, looking after yourself basically. She said, describe your childhood room. You can sketch this room if you want to. What's your favourite thing about it? What's your favourite thing about your room right now? If you can't think of anything for your room right now, get something you like in there. Maybe something from that old childhood room. She wants you to list 5 childhood accomplishments and to take a look at your habits. Which of your habits are holding you back in life? Which of your habits stop you being creative? Some rotten habits are more subtle. So do you hang out with people who bore you? and belittle your dreams, why they help you in the moment, why you think you need to hold on to them, what benefit are you getting from those bad habits? Because it's often something that you learnt when you were much younger, and at the time it worked. But now, as an adult, you are a much different person, and those bad habits might not serve the same purpose anymore, and they're probably quite destructive. So yes, that was week 3. My artist day, I went to a museum, and I'll put some footage in here of my trip to the museum. Recovering a sense of integrity. Now, this is the week where I came up across a lot of obstacles, and I actually disagree with Julia Cameron in this chapter. For this chapter, she wants you to recover a sense of identity. So get back to your true self and your what your real boundaries are, your morals, what's important to you, irrespective of all the things you've been told from the outside world. And that will get you back to your true self, which then will be in a better position to unblock your creativity. So yeah, she wanted you this week to not read anything. Now, when the book was written, there wasn't the internet and social media and all that kind of thing, so we were a lot less distracted back then. But now we've got, phones, on our phones all the time, scrolling through social media, and time passes and you've not really done anything constructive. You've just got sucked into this scrolling habit. And she says that all of these things, but in her case, she talks about it as reading. So any form of media is how I interpreted it. You're not supposed to do any of those during week 4. Now this sent me into a total flipping panic when I read that, because I love reading and I don't want to not read. So I did one day of not reading, no media, and it was awful. I felt really lonely and I felt really down in the dumps. I don't think it helps because I'm off work at the moment healing my knee, so I hadn't got that as a distraction and to pass time. And because I live on my own, there's nobody to talk to. So, you know, instead of doing all those things with input from media, if you had other people around you, you'd sit and chat maybe, or, you know, do something together, play a board game or something. But because I'm on my own, there's nobody to do that with. It felt very, very isolating, and the prospect of 6 more days of it was just grim, absolutely grim. So I decided to make a rule for myself that I could read physical books, but not e-books or audio books. I wouldn't go on social media at all. I've taken the apps off my phone and I don't have them on my laptop. Not to watch lots of TV, but I could have an hour in the evening when I could watch a documentary or a drama, but only for an hour, and then that would be it. So that felt like I was doing a lot because I'm blocking out all this outside input to allow myself to do more creative things and to get bored. I think that's the point, really. You've got to get bored enough to go and do something creative. And I did clean out some cupboards, so I must have been really bored. And I did some drawing practice and some colouring. I did a collage. So I was quite creative this week. Sorry, Julia, I'm not giving up my books because I get so much joy from it. And I think in some ways that can enhance creativity because you're inspired, you know, you're reading about new things that you might not know about otherwise, and that sparks new ideas in your head. Don't know, I really admire the people who get through this week without having any form of input from media, but it wasn't for me. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's totally necessary. I think stopping doom scrolling is probably necessary this week because it takes up so much time. You know, maybe fiddle around with the rule a bit to suit you better. If you've got a full-time job, then there aren't many hours left at the end of the day to fill, are they? So it might be a little bit easier. But if you're home all the time, then it's a real stretch. So I didn't particularly like this chapter at all. I can see why she's asked you to do it, but I think it's too restrictive for me. And talking about having a sense of integrity, coming back to yourself, in that process you will also lose part of yourself because you're losing the bits that you have set up that other people see, and you might get some kickback because if you're not being like they expect you to be, they might get annoyed, upset, worried, angry, because it throws them. They know what they're expecting and they don't get it, so they wonder what's going on. But you also have to try this real identity on for yourself, because if you've been behaving a certain way and going along with other people's ideas, even if you don't necessarily agree with them, then you're having to get used to a new version of you. And even if you know it's the real version, it's still uncomfortable because you're not used to it. So it can be quite a challenging week 4. And I think if you do this process, you get to week 4, go into it knowing that you really need to be kind to yourself. Some stuff might come up that's not very comfortable to deal with. You know, you might even need to go and talk to somebody outside of your family, friend circle if you feel that you need that type of help. Having said that, it's very good to have a real think about your true beliefs and how you want to move through the world. And through doing that, coming home to yourself, she calls it. Activities for this week. Describe your ideal environment. Is it town, country, cosy, swanky? You can draw a picture of it, or you can cut out magazine pictures to show your ideal environment. Describe yourself at 80. What did you do after 50 that you enjoyed? Write a letter from your 80-year-old self to yourself as you are now. What would you tell yourself? That was quite fun. I quite like that. And then another one is imagine yourself at 8 and write a letter to yourself saying what you like to do, what your favourite things were, and what would you tell yourself from 8-year-old you to current age you. Have a look around your house. Is there any room that you could make into a secret private space for yourself? I don't have to worry about that because I'm on my own, so it's all my space. But if you live with other people, then that could be quite a significant thing, that you carve out a little space, even if it's just a chair and a desk, that is your own space. Decorate it for fun and not as an office. You might need a chair, a pillow, a blanket, whatever. This is to help you centre on the fact that creativity is a spiritual, not an ego issue. I don't quite know what she says about that. In fact, some of the things in the book are a bit vague and open to interpretation, and I'm not entirely sure what she means by some of these things, but you take it as it makes sense to you. She wants you to write an artist's prayer. I won't do that because when you read the example that she gives you in the book, it's very heavily God-based, Christian God-based, and that's not my belief system. So I decided not to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't see how it would benefit me. Open your closet and throw out one outfit that makes you feel yucky with low self-worth. And then finally look at one situation in your life that you feel you should change but haven't yet. What is the payoff for you in staying stuck? So yeah, that might prompt you to make some changes in your life, or one change in your life that will actually move you forwards quite a lot. Once you recognise why you're hanging on to it, you can see whether it fits with your new self-identity or not. So yeah, that was week 3 and 4. So yeah, as I said, my week 4 artist date was just doing some colouring. Hopefully week 5 I'll get out and do something outside of the house. So I hope you enjoyed that. Any questions, leave them down in the comments below and I'll try to answer them for you. I hope you've enjoyed it and it's spurred you on maybe to take a look at The Artist's Way for yourself. See you next time. Bye for now.